Okay, so hello everyone and welcome. I hope you can hear us okay. Welcome to the Streamr AMA on the Brubeck Testnet. So I am joined by co-founder Henri Pihkala, head of Ecosystem Matthew Fontana, and lead developer Eric Andrews. So Henri, to set the stage before taking the community's questions, can you please introduce the Brubeck Testnet and maybe the significance of this milestone for Streamr?
Oh, sure. So the Brubeck is basically like the milestone that we've been working on for the past year or so. And the significance of that is that it's the first time when people can actually join in to run nodes in the Streamr network. So for those of you who don't know, the Streamr network is a peer-to-peer network for sharing real-time data streams, basically. And the milestones or the versions of the network that we've had so far have been centralized. So basically the Streamr team has been running all the nodes in the network, and applications could connect to the network to publish and subscribe to data via those nodes, right? But now it starts to decentralize from this milestone. So you can basically download the software, run it on your own machine, whether it's like a server box or Raspberry Pi or even your laptop or whatnot, and connect applications to the content in the network via your own node. So this reduces the kind of dependence on a centralized party like the Streamr team, and basically makes the network kind of unstoppable, right? Which is the very promise of decentralization and Web3. And of course, getting it to work in practice is relatively tricky. And the reason for the test nets is that we kind of get to try it out in practice. You know, there's nothing that we can do within the team to build these kind of conditions that would correspond to a real world situation where hundreds or thousands of people would run a node behind their individual internet connections and their geographic location and different types of nets and so on. So we've done experiments before up to 1,000 or 2,000 nodes or stuff like that, but they, when we do it, we need to run them in the cloud, basically, because that's the only way you can get like 1,000 nodes with a snap of a finger. So it gives us a lot more insight into the real world conditions and what can go wrong in the network, and we are able to make some measurements about like latency, for example, broadcasting a message to all the nodes in the network to really test like large scale broadcasting of messages and stuff like that. So super excited to see that happening. And we released the software only 2 days ago on Tuesday, and it got off to a good start. And now there's over 2,000 nodes on the network at the moment. And today has been a very eventful day, actually, because everything worked fine for the first couple of days. But now that we went up to 2,000 nodes, we start to see some artifacts from that and some parts of the system getting a little bit chaotic. So we've been working today on fixing those and so on. But it was quite expected and exactly like the thing that we wanted to try out, like what will fail first when 2,000 nodes or more join the network. And now we have some answers for that. So the testnet has already contributed to the process. So thanks to everyone who's participated so far. Well, I hope that summarizes a little bit what's happening at the moment.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's been an exciting couple of days. Anything you'd like to add to that, Matthew or Eric?
Well, yeah, I think Henri summed it up pretty well. I'm super excited that this is basically the biggest that the Streamr network has ever been.
By far, by orders of magnitude.
yeah, and just the diversity of the kind of nodes that are being run, the locations that they're being run, where we're seeing all sorts of new and exciting things. It's it's kind of like waking up to Christmas every day. I used to check the crypto prices. Now I check the Network Explorer,
Right.
see how many nodes we have. So yeah, we're all kind of having a lot of fun while this is ramping up to the first testnet. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been very educational to see what happens when we get more and more nodes and how the systems behave, and just seeing what kind of things people encounter and following up on that, and being able to sort of see the points of the system that need to be scaled up yet more. So yeah.
Yeah, and I hope people remember it's the very first ever decentralized testnet. So yeah, we're bound to run into some issues, and that's great. And no one's ever done this before, so it's super exciting to to see it in action.
Great. So let's move on to some of the community's questions then.
With pleasure.
So first of all, are earnings dependent on location, bandwidth, speed, network crowding, hardware quality, etc.?
Well, may I? I don't know who's answering, but we can all kind of contribute to, but not directly. So the rewards are dependent on basically two things. The first and most important is the uptime. So basically, what you should do to maximize your rewards is to have your node stay online during the reward periods. So the first reward period hasn't yet started. It will start next week. So now it's kind of like a pre-testnet when people can start their nodes, but there's no actual rewards being kind of attributed to your node yet. So how the system works is that periodically there's like so the reward system is quite centralized, even though the network itself is decentralized, right? So we have a quite simple system that kind of checks whether nodes are online and subscribe to the stream or not. So there's like one publisher in the network who publishes like randomly generated, we call them reward codes. And those reward codes go to a stream, and every node in the testnet has a kind of a miner plugin which subscribes to this reward code stream. And when they see a new reward code, they kind of report back that, hey, I'm here. That's all it says. I'm here. I got the code. So we can kind of measure like who was online when and who got the message, basically. So we're at the same time we're testing like, does the message reach the nodes in the network, which would be the goal, right, for this kind of network. And these reward codes are kind of being published all the time during the reward periods or the individual test nets. And at the end of all the test nets, we can then see like who was online when, basically, and kind of scale up each node's rewards based on how many reward codes they managed to collect. So if your node goes online or fails to connect to peers or fails to get the reward codes for some other reason, then you're kind of missing out on some of the rewards. So to the question, like, does location matter? No. Does bandwidth speed matter? Not really, because the reward system uses only very little bandwidth. So even if you have a slow connection, you should be okay. We're not testing like throughput here. We're more like testing like, does the message go through? One thing that can affect is the NAT, network address translation, which is basically how local routers or ISP level routers kind of transform the IP addresses to something that's outward facing. So there's different types. Some old ones might have trouble forming these peer-to-peer connections, but the network should kind of heal from that situation, because if you can't connect to some peer, then you're basically going to replace that peer with somebody else, and eventually you'll find someone who you can connect to. So the kind of percentage of nodes that are able to receive the reward code should be like fairly high.
Great.
Eric would
Matt.
know more about the different NAT types and the problems associated with those, but maybe we don't need to go through all of that.
I think most people on the Discord have got it working pretty well. Some connections. Of course, if you're behind a very restrictive firewall, it's possible that you won't see those codes or those messages. So there's been this code, a timer about when the Brubeck kind of reward time starts, and that gets published. So that's the code you should be seeing. And if you don't see that code, can be a problem. However, there has been those problems today that we're looking into. So those codes should start coming later today.
Don't panic if you haven't seen those codes today, because it's been a mess today.
And to the question, as Henri said, when the reward period starts, make sure your computer is online, and it needs to be able to react when it gets a code. So that's kind of the thing there. That's the kind of key two parts. If you get those right, it should be good.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a few other questions related to rewards that we can touch on.
Mm-hmm.
Is the speed of earning with a node inversely proportional to crowd at that location? So more crowd, less earnings, or more crowd, more earnings?
No, the location is not important. The other factor that I forgot to mention, so one was this uptime, and the other one is how many nodes in total there are in the network. So we built kind of like a curve that unlocks more rewards as more nodes join the network. So the maximum reward pool is 2 million data tokens, and there's like a curve that determines the size of the reward pool. So as more nodes join the network, there will also be more rewards available. So the cake is growing at the same time when new nodes are coming in to share the cake, until it reaches the maximum, after which everyone's kind of just diluting each other. So at some point the cake doesn't grow anymore. When it reaches 2 million tokens, then people are just sharing the fixed size cake after that. And we set the curve so that it maxes out somewhere around 2000 nodes, if I remember correctly. So we were anticipating actually the node participation has exceeded our expectations. So we kind of built like an incentive for more nodes to join until around 2000 nodes, but looks like we got that 2000 nodes like in the first 48 hours. So I think the reward pool will get maxed out, and there will be 2 million tokens to distribute among those who collect the reward codes. And then those who've collected more of the reward codes will get a bigger slice of the cake, and those who collected less will get a smaller slice of the cake. And that's how it works.
Yeah, and there will be like a leaderboard application where you can track your nodes performance against others. So that will be released soon. But yeah.
Yeah, and there was some community person who was building that, right?
Yeah, exactly. A dev from one of our previous hackathons is up for the challenge. Yeah, but I think we can. Awesome. Yeah, I think we can also release the APIs as endpoints as well, and anybody can play around with the metrics. I think it's all
build your own stats dashboard
exactly.
kind of thing. Yeah, it will show the kind of a percentage and amount of reward codes collected, but it won't show you the amount of tokens collected, because the amount of tokens can only be kind of known at the end, because first of all, you don't know what the reward pool size is until the end, but maybe we can now assume that it will be the full amount. And secondly, you don't know how many reward codes there will be in total until the end. So it's not possible to compute like okay, my node today has earned like 157 data tokens. So you won't be able to get that from the stats because of how it's calculated, but you can see how well you're doing.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Eric or Matthew, regarding rewards or the details of,
No, I guess I think Henri said it all there. Yeah, it's sort of be in it to get the reward codes, and then the details will be sorted out after all the dust is settled. We'll be able to kind of compare how many reward codes were released, the performance of everybody's nodes. We'll be actually making a scientific paper on the testnet performance. So we're going to kind of dig into the data and be able to kind of fairly reward the nodes, but that will take a little bit of time. So yeah, I guess be prepared. It's quite a low risk activity to participate in the network. Nothing's bad's going to happen. You'll get some rewards, and yeah, we'll do our best to calculate it fairly once it's all complete.
Matthew's been in the front lines on Discord, seeing how people kind of set up their nodes and what they are worried about. So do you feel that the rewards are something that people are kind of particularly concerned about, or is it more like people want to try this out?
I don't know. It's a good question. If we said there's no rewards at all, if we if we do a rug pull, let's say, would everybody would nobody run a node? I don't think so. I think there's a big spectrum of reasons why people want to join the decentralized network and kind of get their hands dirty, see what it's like, and of course we once the full Tatum economics kicks in, this is great training experience for being a broker node in the final version. So the testnet is very artificial in the sense that we're making this centralized backend. We're kind of creating these artificial incentives in substitute of the real thing. But yeah, it's also a lot of fun as well, I think. Even if people get stuck for a little bit, they're feeling like hackers, and it's fun to be on the command line. I'm very biased, of course, but yeah, I think people are a little bit enjoying it, even though it can suck at sometimes. So yeah, also thank everybody for their patience. It is the first testnet. It is like at the rawest it will be. We are working very hard on the user experience of setting up and running a node. Eventually it will be available in the browser. So it'll be very easy to be able to run and manage a node. But yeah, this is the rawest, earliest form you get to see it at. I think that's cool too. And yeah, we're here with you on this journey.
I'm glad you brought up like the positioning of Brubeck versus the future. In the beginning, when I did the introduction to this milestone, I kind of looked back, but I forgot to look forward. So definitely like next year is the kind of last planned milestone of the original ICO roadmap called Tatum. And in Tatum, there's going to be like the network incentives properly in place, so that people who want to kind of sponsor certain streams to be more robust against attacks or have better performance, they can kind of put some tokens into it, and then people can mine those streams to earn tokens. And like Matthew said, this Brubeck Testnet incentive, also intensive, but incentive cycle is kind of like a mock version of that, with only one stream that's incentivized, and that's the stream where the reward codes kind of come from. So it's like a centralized mock of the big thing that will come next year. But the concept is fairly similar, so that you run a node, you configure a miner, the miner plugin in there. Now this testnet distribution that people are running comes with that kind of pre-configured, and it's just hard coded that okay, I'm going to mine this reward code stream here in the testnet, and there's no smart contracts involved. It's more like a centralized back and forth from the reward code publisher, and then the nodes reacting to that by reporting that hey, I was here. But in the eventual mechanisms of the network, it will be based on smart contracts and more like cryptographic proofs or attestations from your peers that you were observed to be there in the network and stuff like that. Yeah, very, very simplified version, and also kind of brittle, I guess, in the sense that if there's a lot of nodes, things can start to break in this kind of setup that we have today. And it's actually a really good testament to the dangers of centralization, which we know that it's just not so scalable. So even though we have a decentralized network, this rewards thing is still based on a centralized pattern, and it can break if there's like too much action in there, which is a happy problem, of course, but so it goes. This is why we need decentralization.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's move on from rewards. There are a few others we can come back to on that. Eric, maybe you can walk us through what will happen when testnet 1 begins. How will it be different from now? Will we be sending traffic through those kind of things?
Yeah, I think it will be mostly the same actually, but of course that traffic is associated then with rewards, right? So your node will do what it does now. It will propagate those messages to other nodes. It will form connections to other nodes. It will communicate with the tracker. It will communicate with the miner backend, which is the centralized component, which we use to gather kind of information about what your node is doing. So sort of what you are running now is the real thing. So that's the key point. But of course, right now we aren't counting these codes now towards those rewards. So that there's the clear deadline when that starts. So
yeah, we're kind of getting dummy codes in the network at the moment.
Exactly.
And then the dummy codes just change to real codes once the testnet officially starts. So this way we can test that everything's working already before you kind of start seeing the live ammo in the network. Just practicing with duds now.
Yeah, exactly, and it's only fair we let everyone have some time to set it up and get it working, so that when the real thing starts, they're ready to go and have everything like shiny and working and that way.
You had a good analogy for this, Henry, didn't you? The Formula One cars.
Oh yeah. I was trying to explain this internally. So when a Formula One race starts, first they kind of let the cars onto the track, and they'll do a couple of warm-up laps and start to, assemble themselves onto the start straight. They have those slots there and everything, and so that's basically what's happening now. The cars are driving on the track and just checking it out, and then they go to the start line, and then the lights change from red to green, and that's when the reward codes start being kind of live or active reward codes, and that's when the race starts. And then in this first reward code period that's going to happen next week, we just run it for a couple of days, and then there's kind of like a breather period for people to update their nodes to a newer software version that we might release, or for us to fix some bugs. And then there's going to be like a second reward code period. You kind of have part 1 and part 2 of the race, maybe a part 3 as well. So it's not yet fixed like how many reward periods there will be. We're going to keep running these until the problems are solved. Yes, and of course the purpose of the testnet is to uncover problems, and if we don't see problems anymore, then we're ready to release it into production use.
A few people have been asking about what exactly the Network Explorer shows, why some nodes have more connections than others, how that works. Maybe you can give some context to that, Matthew or Henri.
Want to give it a shot?
Maybe Eric actually would have a
sure
a stronger answer here.
So as a part of the network, we do run a couple of our own nodes, and those nodes are kind of special in the sense that they serve certain purposes. For example, when you open up the Network Explorer, the real-time data you're seeing is actually from a node there. So that data needs to be served, right? So there's a specialized node for that. But that node has to kind of have a lot of information about what's happening in the network. So it kind of has a lot of connections there. And the other one is that we gather sort of metrics about what your node is doing. Sort of what are the message rates, how are the connections forming, sort of diagnostic data we can use later on to when we're analyzing the results and seeing how stuff worked. So there's another node then that collects those. So we have these couple specialized nodes in the network who take a bigger responsibility of doing certain tasks.
Yeah. No, just to clarify, those nodes that we run for these purposes, they don't have any special privileges or anything like that in the network.
Correct.
They're just nodes. They're just nodes that kind of subscribe to a lot of stuff from the network. So for example, these metric streams that every node is publishing onto the network, there's nothing special. They're just public streams that anyone can read in the network.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point, because anyone could actually build this if they wanted to. They could subscribe to those same streams and build something equivalent if they so desired. So it's just like the same node you're running, but there's some more application logic on top of it.
Right. And it's actually interesting to realize this, that people can build applications. That's actually the purpose of the network, right? So right now, of course, people just run like these nodes because of the incentives, and the nodes don't really do anything else than just participate in the rewards game. But the purpose of the nodes in real life is to support applications, and examples of those applications are, for example, the Network Explorer, right? So the Network Explorer is like actually an application built on top of the Streamr network to show the information in the Streamr network. So we're kind of eating our own food there, and that's pretty cool. Dog fooding is it in English, but I think the Network Explorer tastes a lot better than dog food, though, to be honest. It's more like a gourmet
caviar
plate.
Yeah,
it's more like caviar than dog food. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah. And then the metrics production is actually also like an interesting use case that is like I think very useful in the crypto space. And a while back we did a blog post about how it works in the Streamr network, because it could work in the same way in many other decentralized networks. You don't need to have this like central point where every node connects and sends the data as such, but they can rather publish like this metrics information into a stream that can then be consumed by whoever in the network. So you can then, if you want to do aggregation or stuff like that, like we're doing in the testnet, then that aggregator is also a node in the network that just subscribes to all the kind of partial informations in the network, and then computes some aggregate numbers out of that and publishes them back to the network. So when you go to the Network Explorer, you see the kind of network level stats there, like the number of nodes and messages in and out, and the latency metric that doesn't work at the moment. Those are coming from a stream on the network, and that stream is published by this aggregator, and the aggregator is subscribing to all the individual metric streams that all of your nodes are publishing, right? So the whole thing uses the Streamr network to produce the output that you're seeing. There's no back end in that sense for the Network Explorer. That's pretty cool.
On the subject of building on the Streamr network, is that something someone can do today? How would they do that? What kind of things would you like to see?
Yeah, they can definitely do it. So the node ships with 3 plugins that you can activate. If you go through the config wizard, it will ask you like which of these plugins you want to turn on. There's like HTTP interface, WebSocket interface, and MQTT. MQTT is a popular messaging protocol in the IoT space, and it's a pub/sub protocol, so very close to what the Streamr network kind of implements. So these simple interfaces can be used to connect applications to the node, and those applications can then subscribe or publish data from the network. And also there's going to be like a what we call a light node. So in that case, the node would kind of run as part of your application, kind of embedded. So you wouldn't run like your application and the node separately, but rather the node would be in your application, kind of like a library would normally be. You kind of import it as a library. So in that case, you just run your application, and every user of your application kind of becomes a node in the network. That's also very cool for for scalability as well as for robustness, because it doesn't depend on any external service to be up and running. So the Network Explorer, for example, doesn't use that pattern yet. We're still waiting to get the kind of get the node running in the browser properly, but it almost works already. So that implementation will be in JS, in JavaScript. So every web-based application, including like React Native and that kind of stuff, will be able to run a light node within the application to publish and subscribe data from the network. That will be extremely cool.
Matthew, maybe there's something you'd like to add on that, regarding the ecosystem. I know there's been quite a lot of activity, people building various things with Streamr. Is there something else you'd like to see or tell people about?
Riffing on what Henri said, once we have these light nodes activated, what we can then see is these massive applications come in like a big data union with thousands of members. We'll see thousands of nodes come from that data union as well, and they'll light up the Network Explorer, and they'll be able to kind of have this synergistic relationship with the underlying infrastructure. I just find that so cool that these applications that contributing to the fair data economy are actually kind of nourishing the underlying infrastructure at the same time. Looking forward to that.
Good stuff. This might be an Eric question. Is it how will you be stress testing the network, and overall, what do you hope to learn from the testnet?
Yeah, I guess it came up in the earlier question, kind of like what we hope to learn. I guess we sort of are stress testing the network as we go at this point. So we are trying to create a lot of connections there and that sort of thing. I don't know if we plan to push more data maybe in the future and see how that affects things. We've encountered all sorts of things like one surprising thing was how many connections one of our nodes could take, because based on initial testing, we were kind of thinking it would be much less, but we're surprised it has been able to take more connections than what we initially thought. And also we've seen like the impact of having very large packets, payloads, and how that impacts things and those sort of things. So we've kind of found sort of these edge case things and how they affect the behavior and what we need to do about them to sort of flesh out those things and make it work under those circumstances. It's just something you can't get if you just run it yourself. It's impossible to kind of test all those things. Like Henri said in an earlier point, if you spin this all up in AWS, you kind of lose some latency things, and you lose like the heterogeneity of the different systems running it. So this is kind of the only way you can test something like this. And yeah, there's a lot to learn there, and let's see what happens on that front.
Yeah, and for sure there's bottlenecks, like I mentioned, like especially the kind of points that somehow have to do with every node. Those are the obvious ones, such as the trackers. Trackers are kind of like utilities in the network that help the nodes discover each other. So basically, every node that wants to join a certain stream's topology needs to contact the tracker and ask for peers, like, hey, who else is here? And then they will connect to them. But if there's a lot of nodes and a lot of nodes coming and going all the time, then that will stress the tracker quite a lot. And that's something that we're seeing in the testnet right now. And we have to kind of figure out, okay, how do we kind of alleviate this problem? And you can add more trackers. Of course, it's not like it's not like a single point of failure type of thing in the network, but they can only load balance over kind of different streams. So still, if you have like a huge amount of nodes joining one single stream or stream partition to be precise, then they're still going to run into this problem. But yeah, there's ways to solve it. So let's keep working on those.
Yeah, I think a lot of the core technology also can maybe scale more than our current setup. So in our current setup, we have the one tracker, but really we could be running multiple trackers. So there's nothing sort of preventing that, at least. But as you said, the one stream and many nodes is the challenging part in this, and this scenario is exactly that.
Yeah. So Tom was asking, like, what are we testing in the testnet? So that's one of the very things that we are testing, like a lot of nodes in a single stream. How can it, how will it work? Different streams are okay because the streams are independent in the network. So there's no limit that comes from that. But everybody wants the same thing in the network. Then it starts to get interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I wanted to bring up we had the Streamr network white paper back in the day, and also like, but we're also kind of verifying those results again in this testnet, right? Like we're looking at the numbers we kind of derived theoretically on that paper. We also derived results in Amazon experiments running this in the cloud, but now we're kind of checking them the third time now with people actually having nodes on all sorts of machines. So looking at those numbers and making sure everything matches and is as expected. At least we know what to expect. We have an idea of what we should see with regards to latency and those sorts of numbers.
Yeah, and just a comment here, we're talking about the scalability and performance paper of the Streamr network, not the 2017 ICO white paper. Just to make it clear. Yeah, that one didn't have a lot of empirical research data, more like visionary text about what we're going to build, and we have built.
So let's change gears slightly to look a bit bigger picture and further ahead. So assuming the testnet goes well and Brubeck launches as planned, what stage will the network be in? What can we expect from the network in the next 6 months? What will this mean overall, I guess?
Maybe I can have a stab at that. So obviously the software that is now available for testnet use will then be available for like mainnet use or production use, as it would traditionally be called. So basically people can then use it for real applications. And of course, people have been able to build applications already earlier in the previous generation Streamr networks, but it's been, like I mentioned, it's been going through those centralized nodes. So basically, if somebody builds something, the functioning of that application would have still been like dependent on us. But now that we go to Brubeck era and through decentralization of the message propagation in the network, it's no longer dependent on us. So it's a big factor in kind of removing risks from applications and how people kind of view this technology. You wouldn't build any mission critical applications necessarily on some infrastructure that's depending on a couple of guys somewhere. But if you can take ownership of the system, or partial ownership of the system, in the sense that you participate in running it, then it removes a lot of risk from using this kind of thing. So I think it's simpler to understand if you compare it to blockchains, for example. Like let's talk about Ethereum. So would you really have your digital assets on Ethereum if Vitalik was the only one kind of running the network or whatever, So maybe you trust him enough to do that, but everyone is happy to keep like a lot of value on the Ethereum network because they know that the functioning of the network is not dependent on any single party or even a group of parties. It will just stay there as long as there's enough nodes in the network to keep it alive and keep the kind of consensus going. So in some way, similar ideas translate to the Streamr network as well, that the functioning of applications is no longer dependent on centralized party, but rather the whole network and the different parties that are in there. And if you look at the particular stream, stream of content in there, its existence is dependent on the publisher and the subscribers that interact on that stream, and no third party at all. So that makes it very strong and powerful as the intended use case of the Streamr network, which would be to kind of act as the real-time data transport protocol for the decentralized web, like replacing cloud services that do similar things. And that's the positioning of the network. And with Brubeck, it becomes technically possible. And with the next milestone, Tatum, it becomes incentivized, right? So until that time, the incentives are either kind of artificial, like they are in the testnet, in the Brubeck testnet, or based on the actual token economy that will emerge when some people will also pay to have their streams kind of mined. So in that case, it will fully be, it will just, complete the picture at that time.
Is there anything you'd like to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I just find it very fascinating, the idea of having the decentralized kind of data brokerage as opposed to centralized. So say I've built a business on this real-time data on let's say whatever we're collecting, Fitbit data, car data, whatever it be, right? I've built a business, maybe someone else has built a business, we're generating revenue. Why would you want there to be a one player who can stop the whole show, so to say, or start a price hike, like you're using some centralized system to do the pub sub? If everyone else is happy in the game, why wouldn't we continue the game? And that's exactly what like Streamr network enables. If everyone is happy with the system, there's no one player who can just go and shut it down. Like no one can do a price hike. It's like market pricing for data brokerage. And if everyone is happy in the system goes on. And it's just great to build something, I think, on top of that sort of an assumption.
Yeah, compared to a centralized system, like you could build, the Brubeck Testnet could be built on on a centralized data broker, in terms that there could be 2,000 nodes connected to the centralized message broker, and then someone could be broadcasting some reward codes there and seeing who got it. But the whole system would be like totally reliant on that centralized point. Maybe it couldn't handle 2,000 connections. Maybe it would cost a lot to run. You'd be paying AWS or Microsoft or whoever to have that thing up and running. The centralized server could easily like censor, for example, the reward codes. Maybe they want to claim all the rewards for themselves, so they don't send it onwards to anybody, but rather Microsoft is there claiming the rewards or whatever. So it's totally in control of that centralized point. But when you have this decentralized network, then no party can apply censorship or anything like that, but rather it's like just peer-to-peer.
So I guess the follow-up to that is we've heard some of the possible advantages of decentralized networks. What's the reverse of that? What might be some of the challenges? This is quite new territory.
Really hard to build. It's the hardest thing. It's the negative. These systems, they don't exist today. Google isn't building it. These established monopolies, they're not building the disrupting technologies that is going to eat their lunch. This needs to be a grassroots movement, and I'm so grateful that Streamr exists and has the capacity to execute this long vision. It's a very hard slog of building this infrastructure piece that doesn't just come about overnight. It's taken us 4 years to get to this point and it's just the end of the beginning. In a sense, and I guess that's the biggest con of all this. Yeah. It's hard. It's a lot of work.
It is, and there's prior successes, of course, in the peer-to-peer space. So there was BitTorrent, huge success, millions of users around the world, mainly using it to share wares at the time. But let's forget about that. But technically speaking, and kind of from an ideological perspective, it was like very disruptive at the time, and it completely changed the music industry, completely changed the movie industry. Now we have Spotify and Netflix and all these things that were kind of born as a reaction to the difficulty of consuming media. It was easier to go to BitTorrent and download some content than to actually buy it in a legit way. So these businesses had to reinvent themselves. Okay, then we have the blockchains, like started with Bitcoin, followed up with Ethereum and others, completely disruptive. They're not disrupting the media industry like BitTorrent did, but they're disrupting the whole finance industry and possibly how we write software and applications and so on, like giving birth to the whole decentralized internet. So again, very disruptive, completely like changing an industry there. So clearly the direction in which the world is going is towards decentralization, and every new protocol, every new use case has an opportunity to disrupt the existing. And I think one of the promises of Web3 from a technical point of view is that like right now, like 99% of the internet and applications are running on the cloud services, right? So, you get very far-reaching consequences when something goes wrong on AWS or Azure or something. You have the internet goes dark suddenly. So this is not good, right? And it's not good from reliability perspective, but also not good from privacy perspective. All your data goes there and so on and so on. So I think the direction in which the world needs to go is towards this, and Streamr like has its own part to play in this bigger, in this bigger show. It's I don't know if it's a main character or sidekick or what. It doesn't really matter, but I think the goal is very, very clear, and creating like a system where data can be shared and distributed in this way is very important. I don't remember what the original question is. Went on a ideological tangent here, if you allow it.
Yeah, just from like a technological perspective, yeah, I guess Fontana said this, but it's much harder to build, right? Like much more complexity involved code-wise.
Yeah, that was the original point.
Yeah.
So maybe I started to demonstrate that it's only happened kind of like 2 times in history that someone's built something successful at very, very large scale. First BitTorrent, then blockchains, right? But we'll get there.
Okay. So I think we can maybe jump to some of the live questions. There's a few more to cover. Will there be a way to join without needing code in the future? Will it be easier to onboard as a node? Is that part of the roadmap?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Short answer, yes. I'm sure. Like even this very first round, the documentation is just a blog post. So we're going to follow that up with another blog post, probably more videos, and then I'd love to see the community, which is already happening, sort of helping each other out in kind of peer-to-peer way. So all of this will sort of build this level of knowledge and help that will make it so much easier to run a node in terms of like technical. Well, in terms of a user interface, for example, I think we'll get there. Maybe someone in the community will build one. The trend is very clear. What exactly those pieces will be is not so clear, but yeah, I think this will be like the hardest it is to run a node.
Oh, for sure.
But already we've seen 2,000 nodes spring up in 2 days, so it's also not too bad where we are now. So it'll only get easier.
Yeah, there's like two groups of audiences kind of for the Streamr node. So if you're building an application and you want to use the protocol for your application, which is like kind of like the primary thing, then you're probably a developer and you have that technical expertise required to run a node. And then on the other hand, there are the kind of miners, right? And if you want to mine the network, then you would run a node, but not necessarily have like an application that you want to use with with your nodes. So in that case, we do run into the situation that, okay, people want to run nodes who might not be that like technically oriented, that they would have done this kind of thing before, and we'll definitely try to make that side of things easier. And yeah, I don't know how Streamr mining will look like, but if you think about Bitcoin mining or Ethereum mining, it's become very professional. So no ordinary person kind of gets the required hardware and that kind of stuff to run a like serious Bitcoin mining operation. But in the case of Streamr, because it doesn't require a lot of resources, it doesn't require any specialized hardware, I think it's much easier for ordinary people to kind of participate in running the network, which is great, but it also means that we need to work on making the experience somehow more approachable and easier for people to participate. So I don't know where exactly to kind of draw the line, who's supposed to be doing this. My grandma.
Who's grandma? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. My grandma probably wouldn't, run a Streamr node. but one or two steps towards the more technically savvy from that, it starts to be in the zone that, okay, it's possible, you can run this, you can earn some tokens, and so on. So I think that's where we're kind of aiming, but I don't think it makes sense to go into the grandma territory anyway. At the end of the day, there's probably enough supply for running nodes, even like in the sphere that I think we're already reaching.
Yeah, I think accessibility has always been quite a strong suit of Streamr. For everything that we've built, we've sort of always had an eye on it. And I think, even at day one of running a broken node, we've been able to make it reasonably easy for technically minded people. I think that's just going to get easier and easier. And
and in that future, you might be running a node and not even know you're running a node. So you might open a browser window and might be running an application, and you not even know you're running a node, but you're actually running a node in the background. So that would be the like sweet spot, like that would be so golden.
This is how decentralized technology should really look like, that you're kind of using it without knowing that you're using it. If you have an Ethereum wallet, for example, and you want to make a transaction, then the wallet will need to connect to an Ethereum node somewhere to kind of pass the transaction to the network. So the wallet makers usually run their Ethereum nodes, but if those go down, then the wallet doesn't work anymore, and you need to at least manually configure it to use some other node. But imagine that if there was a node, an Ethereum node in the wallet, so you would kind of always have the application and the wallet in one, right? So then nothing could ever stop your transactions, right? This is why it's very important to have these light nodes that you can kind of have as part of application that are not like second level citizens of in there, but they're like, they're like first tier citizens in the network.
So if you
maybe if I could just chime in with one last point, it's probably like I'm not sure if we've defined clearly yet that we can talk about light nodes and minor nodes. So what we're asking people to run in the testnet is a minor node. And sometimes when we talk about running nodes in a browser or running nodes in an application, that is a light node. And those light nodes aren't necessarily sponsoring or supporting other people's streams. They're sort of in it for their own data propagation. But a minor node is eventually going to be kind of doing work for other streams and expecting an income for that work.
Yeah, it's like cooking food. Like, if you're cooking at home and eating your own food, then you're kind of like a light node. But if you work as a professional chef in a restaurant, you're cooking a lot of meals for other people, then you're kind of like this, what we call broker node or minor node. And that's what you're running in the testnet. So you're all like restaurant chefs at the moment. But there's only one course in the menu, which is the rewards, the single reward stream. But in a full-blown like incentivized network, like in the next milestone Tatum, you would have like a big menu of food that exists in the network, and then customers are ordering whatever food they want to eat, and then you as a chef, you're serving that to them and they pay you.
By the way, shout out to this 123 Mimung guy in YouTube comments who noticed my headphones or recognized the brand.
You guys should connect offline.
So on the subject of the build up to Tatum, can you say anything about how incentives will work after the testnet is finished?
Yeah, you mean in Brubeck before Tatum? Yeah, right. So it hasn't quite been decided yet. There hasn't been like a governance proposal for that. So in the early summer, there was a governance proposal that decided on these testnet rewards, but there haven't been any proposal or decision yet about like Brubeck mainnet rewards. And all of that would be purely artificial or bootstrapping in the sense, like just like the testnet, so that, you know, there would be pool of tokens, basically like inflationary pool of tokens that can be given out to nodes that participate in the network. It can be done. I think it's interesting. We should probably make a proposal about that as well to kind of keep the momentum and keep the bootstrapping going until we have like the real cycle where tokens also enter from the demand side for the technology. Like right now, it's, you know, this is how networks and blockchains and stuff are usually bootstrapped, so that there's like a there's like a incentive, like artificial supply, right? It's just tokens come from thin air and are given to people until there is like organic demand for the technology, and then it becomes sustainable when people actually pay to use the software, and that money goes to those who run the software. I think we can create like a smooth curve towards that, but I wouldn't want to like waste kind of too much supply in keeping the kind of artificial Brubeck thing going on, but rather save up some tokens to really then kickstart Tatum incentives. So in there, what will then happen is that there's going to be probably like this kind of bootstrapping or bonus component to it that then diminishes over time to be replaced by the organic supply and demand mechanics over there. So that's how I see that working eventually. But you know, the question still remains, like, should there be some kind of incentive in Brubeck mainnet? I think so. Maybe there could be some incentivized streams that are, for example, selected by the governance process. Some interesting streams, like ones that belong to applications like Swash or Unbanks or whatever, you know, whoever's building, you know, there could be a part, kind of like they used to have on Uniswap, these farming incentives for selected pools that they had on there, or selected pairs. I think there was 4 of them, and you know, you would go and stake your LP tokens into those pools to earn uni tokens, but there was just those 4, and those 4 were decided by the governance process, and then it ran for a while, and then it kind of ended. So maybe Streamr could have something similar, that there's like a pre-selected set of streams that are incentivized, and you can do mining. You can do mining in the Brubeck network in those pre-selected streams, and then the incentives come from the reward pool for those. And then at Tatum, it will become like fully, you know, so anyone can add incentives to any stream, right? So it gets kind of liberated in that sense. Something like that might be interesting, I think. But we've been so busy with building the testnet and the Brubeck that the kind of process of submitting governance proposals has a little bit had second priority now. So I think we'll have to, you know, organize the next round of governance quite soon. But let's get over this hump first.
It might be a good time to remind everyone that the community can also submit governance proposals, and can go through these kind of steps of parliament, or however you want to describe it. And yeah, we can vote on it, and if they're great ideas, then we'll execute on them.
Definitely, we might have to encourage people to do it a little bit, like have a call for proposals, like, you know, 2 weeks when we like, okay, now is the time to submit your proposals, and then there's going to be voting, just to, otherwise it's, you know, people are a little they don't get over the line with with writing those proposals. But yeah.
All right, so there's a few more questions. Maybe let's fire through a few of these from the community.
Yeah.
We've kind of covered this a few times in Discord and maybe here, but can you just say, are there any requirements for joining the testnet, and will there be any additional requirements added later on, hardware, minimum speed, and anything like that?
I'm speaking too much, so I'll be happy to
let go. I mean, if it works, it works. So I mean, not officially, I guess. People are running it on Raspberry Pi, at least version 3 and version 4. I know those work. So if you want some sort of a specs, you could maybe look at those specs and deduce the same thing from that. It's not very CPU memory heavy. The main thing is getting Node installed. You must be able to install Node. You must get the NPM install to go through and that sort of thing, or you run it on the Docker environment. Of course, bandwidth, you need to have some bandwidth there. But yeah, I mean, anyone else have any point there?
For the testnet, the requirements are very small. The node itself is very lightweight, and the testnet, the reward cycle doesn't use a lot of bandwidth either. Of course, then if you think a little bit later into the future, project to the future, and you'd have like that restaurant menu with different options there, and then in that case your ability to mine is limited by the hardware or the network connection. If you have a crappy machine with a crappy connection, then you can just mine less streams. You wouldn't be able to eat the whole menu, but maybe only the appetizer, because you just can't fit so much into your box. All right. But if you have a more powerful machine or better connection, then you can do more mining on that. So it's not like 0 or 1, it's like a gray scale of how much work you can do in the network, depends on what kind of hardware you have. But in the testnet, it's all very lightweight. We're not testing like large volumes of data in there, so you're not going to need that kind of bandwidth.
In the future, definitely those specs might ramp up if you want to become a miner, like a serious miner for some, and get paid for it. In this, we're talking about not Brubeck, but Tatum world. We're in the Tatum world, and that in that world, certain streams may make a decision between a trade-off between like bandwidth and latency, especially if it's a big stream. And if someone wants, if a stream owner or who's kind of controlling that stream wants a very, very low latency, then the bandwidth requirement goes up. And in such cases, they're probably willing to pay you more to become a miner, but you must be willing to also have that bandwidth. So those specs will probably come up more in the later phases.
Yeah, and it'll be kind of stream specific kind of sense. You'll have like, okay, if you want to mine this stream, this is going to take like 1 megabyte per second of your bandwidth or something like this, or at least an estimate. And if you kind of say that, okay, I'm going to do it, you have to put a stake in there to kind of guarantee that you're actually doing what you're promising to do, right? And then you can earn the rewards from that stream. But if you fail to live up to the sort of, I hate to call it SLA, but you're promising something, and if you don't deliver that, then you're in danger of getting slashed. You might lose your stake. So if it turns out you don't have like enough bandwidth to participate in that stream, then you're in trouble. So you kind of you're trying to bite more than you can chew, right? So it will be but then you don't have to select the heaviest stream on the menu. You can take something more subtle and participate in that, and still mine that stream then.
Yeah, and you can also delegate as well. So let's say that Henri wants to enter an agreement to propagate messages on a particular stream, and he doesn't have the data tokens, enough data tokens to stake into the contract.
Right.
I can say, well, I know Henri I know his reputation quite well. He looks like a good broker. I have data tokens. I'm not really a miner, but I'd like to sponsor Henri's kind of bid for this contract, I suppose. Probably messing up terminology here, but anyway, I'll just roll with it. And for that service, that lending service to Henri, I would get a yield back. So yeah, these sorts of kind of emerging economics will come up. Yeah, and fit into Henri's sushi model of the tokenomics. Maybe we should have called it sushi or chef nomi.
Those are taken, but we have to invent new names. Yeah, there's a blog post that gives people the summary of the different roles and how the Streamr token economics will work in the Tatum milestone onwards. So check out that if you haven't already. But yeah, the Brubeck Testnet and Brubeck milestone doesn't yet have those things.
Maybe just one specific point to the question it was asking about the requirements. I noticed in my local Docker stack, I've seen a few other people kind of report similar memory usage of about 400 megabytes. So by all means, that's not like absolute, but it's sort of like a heuristic you might want to.
I just checked that, like on my Raspberry Pi, I'm running NP like the node directly, and it's around 150 megs when I started. So I guess the Docker has some overhead, which is expected, of course, but so just some numbers there to work with.
Yeah. If you want a lighter version, the NPM approach is better. But if you want a bit more easy way to go, probably Docker. In terms of platform dependence, NPM is a bit more flexible, but it might be a bit harder to get working if you're non-technical. So there's little pros and cons.
One question that people sometimes ask, like, can I run it on my laptop, right? And yes, you can run it on your laptop, but the point is kind of to keep it on, right? So usually people would install this on some kind of always on machine. If you're trying to get those rewards and you close your laptop, then that's going to stop your node and you're not going to be collecting those rewards. And I think this is quite obvious to many, but not to everyone. So maybe worth mentioning the obvious things here as well.
That's a good point. I think in many laptops you can sort of disable or increase the time it takes until it suspends. So something like that, if you're going to run this on a laptop, might be worth looking into. I don't know how to do it off hard, like to tell you what to do. Of course, it depends on your operating system, but I know in Mac you can kind of increase it so that it never kind of
put your computer to never sleep and
and of course have the power plug.
Don't run it on the battery.
That's a good point.
It will run out.
Okay, so I don't think we're going to be able to do any quick fire questions. It's not going to be possible. Poor Anthony, I think, is trying to interpret this in French live. So various analogies and okay. Can I run multiple nodes at once and earn from each node? Can I run multiple nodes on the same machine with the same IP?
Yes, you can do it. Don't go overboard, but you can do it.
You can do it, but like you want to make sure that your nodes stay responsive. So like I could put on this Raspberry Pi, I could maybe start, 50 nodes, but I don't know, like, would any of them anymore do anything, right? Yeah. So you need to balance it out.
Every process or every instance of the software will eat up a bit of memory and CPU, of course. So you can run a few, but if you run a lot, or if you try to kind of grab more money by running 1,000 nodes, then that's not exactly trivial to do. So but one important thing is that you have to use a different Ethereum private key for every node. So if you run multiple instances of a node with the same private key, they're just going to kind of clash with each other on the network. So you have to generate a unique private key for every node that you run.
Yeah. Basically, if you use the same private key, you're just going to be counted once.
Yeah.
So you won't get your rewards.
Yeah, and you might even have trouble like getting your nodes even connected to the network.
Yeah.
Because the address is kind of used as the ID in the peer discovery. So it's just going to get kind of messed up if you do that.
This might not be the easiest to, if this is too technical to explain, we can do it on Discord, but how do I transfer my wallet between nodes or testnet or mainnet later on? Can a wallet be reused?
Yeah, so the private key is your access to everything. So the private key is actually just an Ethereum private key. There's no Streamr private key, right? The Streamr protocol borrows the cryptography used in Ethereum network. So every node is an Ethereum wallet, right? And that Ethereum wallet is that private key. So you can actually import that private key into any Ethereum wallet like MetaMask or MyCrypto or whatever you use. You can import that, and that can hold tokens. And once the reward tokens are distributed, that's the address. That the address that corresponds to that private key is the address that will get those tokens. So we can kind of directly send money to your node, right? Because it has an identity on the Ethereum network, and the identity on the Ethereum network is the same as its identity on the Streamr network, thanks to the shared cryptography there.
Yeah. Most important thing is that you keep track of your private keys. You have access to them. So whenever the rewards come later on, whatever the mechanism, you have control over them, and they're safe. That's important.
Yeah.
Really no more screenshotting of the private keys, please.
Yeah, no screenshotting of it.
Yeah.
Don't take a screenshot of that and post it on Discord. That's not a good idea. But to answer the question specifically, how do you transfer your node from testnet to mainnet? So you can transfer your identity with the private key. So just copy paste the private key, and how to make the node connect to mainnet instead of testnet is just a config change, basically. So we'll communicate about that later. Now all the packages that we're releasing right now are kind of pre-configured to connect to the testnet, and the mainnet doesn't exist yet.
Is it possible to estimate how much data a person might earn per node? If say there are 3,000 during the testnet, 3,000 nodes in the testnet?
Well, yes. If there's 2 million tokens available, and that has been unlocked, basically, maybe we can assume it will fully be unlocked. So there's 2 million data tokens at play. If all of those 3,000 nodes have perfect uptime, like everyone is doing equally well, then they will get an equal share. So it will just be 2 million divided by 3,000, right? But in real life, not all of those nodes will have like the same uptime. They haven't collected equally many reward codes. So in that case, the rewards get distributed kind of proportional to how many reward codes you've collected. Somebody also proposed like squarely proportional, so that it would kind of punish more those who missed some reward codes, but maybe the kind of linear one is okay. I have to a little bit see how it goes and what differences will be. I think both are good and fair options.
Following that, is it possible to estimate how much bandwidth a single node might take up, or I guess that also depends on?
Yeah, almost none if they just participate in the reward mining. if you use an application, if you build an application that uses your node, then it will use the bandwidth required by that application. If you're publishing 1 megabyte per second of data onto the Streamr network, then you will need 1 megabyte per second of bandwidth to use it, or maybe actually more, depending on how the topology of that stream. So the nodes are usually connected to 4 peers. So if you're from application level, you're producing 1 megabyte per second, then your node will actually need 4 megabytes per second, at least basically, of upstream bandwidth to send the data onto the network.
And finally, if someone's connected their node to the network successfully, is there anything they need to do between now and the rewards going live, updates or anything?
I'll shut up now. I'm talking too much again.
Maybe Eric is the best person to answer this.
It might be that there might be some updates we need to publish at this. We're looking at now what the issues we've uncovered is and how can we solve them. It's always best if we can solve it in a way where we don't have to force anyone to update software. But sometimes, of course, we need to do some sort of update. So I would say maybe, yeah, follow the Discord, and I guess we'll have an announcement on that if we plan to do some sort of an update there. I guess the same instructions would mostly apply, or there would be like an update section specifically written on how to do the updates, depending on whether you're using npm or if you're using Docker.
Yeah, and the other point I'd like to make is in the days leading up to the testnet, there might be upgrades on our side that sort of disrupt the node, and maybe they need to disconnect and reconnect. But the nodes are built in a way that they will sort of heal themselves and sort themselves out once the network has come back into a healthy state. So I guess my point is, don't panic if you get a lot of warnings, and yeah, maybe just wait a little bit and see if it returns to a healthy state. Keep an eye on Discord, of course, for any announcements about upgrading or anything like that. But in general, the nodes should be able to heal themselves.
Yeah, we kind of left in maybe a bit too many warning logs in the thing we delivered, but yeah, as said, like it's built to continuously retry. So it should eventually connect things, and you'll have nodes dropping. You're connected to another node. They drop for whatever reason. You will get some sort of warning in the logs, but then your node will try to reconnect to the next node, and that's normal behavior there. As I've outlined, yeah. Well, if you can find your node on the Network Explorer, that's usually a good sign that things are going well.
Yeah.
You're being recognized.
And if you can see those kind of announcer messages that are published every minute, it says literally like, if you can see this message, you're good. You're you're getting the messages.
But right now you might have some trouble seeing those, so that's what we're fixing.
Yeah. Today is tricky, so we'll try to fix it on our end, but we might need to also update the software, maybe even before the first reward period. So that would basically be like tomorrow, Friday, or on Monday, or during the weekend or something. So keep an eye on the channels. And those of you who are also signed up on that email list that was already a couple of months back open, like who wants signing up to run a node, then we'll probably send an email to that list as well if there's a new version available.
Yeah, I noticed a good question. Someone asked, like, how many coins do we have to join the network? You don't need to have any coins. It's more about setting up the node. It doesn't. Yeah. You don't have to buy any coins or anything. Like, it's more about the work of setting it up and getting online. So you can try it out if you want.
We don't mind if you buy some coins, but it's not required.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we've hopefully covered most of your questions and the ones that come up in the community. Is there anything any of you would like to emphasize or clarify?
think we've covered a lot, and it's been super fun chatting about it, and it's been a very exciting period for us in the team, and this is like one of the major milestones that we've been working towards for many years already. It's really rewarding to see it finally come to life. So I think the whole project is now like, you know, blooming in some sense, because we're getting to the meaty part of things, and I think that's very special.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Henri said and thank everyone for their support and yeah, sharing this kind of special moment with us. It's it's pretty cool. Enjoying it.
And great to see that kind of increased level of participation as well, like 2,000 nodes in the network. Like, we didn't quite expect that necessarily. We were kind of secretly dreaming about it, but couldn't really like realistically hope for it. But it happened. So great, and the number just keeps growing. So that's good. We're really gonna get like good, like proper acid test for the network in this testnet already.
Yeah, likewise. Great stuff, everyone. So I think we'll close the live stream. So thanks to all of you, and thanks to everyone who sent questions. If we didn't get to yours, please ask them in the Discord channels. Keep following us on the socials, and we'll see you next week for when the rewards begin. And thanks very much.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheerios.
Okay, I think we're